What's up, everyone? Today we're going over the difference between mobility and flexibility. Alright, so today we're going over what is the difference between mobility and flexibility. Alright, this is one of the first questions I actually ask my interns, and I usually get like, oh, stretch? You know, like new interns coming in and they're kind of like fumbling around with the words. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm gonna use superheroes again. I'm gonna use people that I could to better represent this the difference. All right. So mobility is active range of motion. Okay. I'm gonna be using Spider Gwen to be demonstrating that, and flexibility is passive range of motion. I'm gonna use Mr. Fantastic, because out of all the heroes of MCU, Marvel Comics, in the Marvel universe, I think Mr. Fantastic has the most flexibility. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure there's people out there like, actually, Austin, on issue 234, the Fantastic Four meets Dr. Doom. but yeah, so when we go more of some mobility, active range of motion, okay, so that is your ability to move within a range of motion with purpose, with intent. Being able to actively flex your shoulder, going like this, okay? Or flex your bicep. All right, go around in a circle in your shoulder. Actively rotate your neck. So I'm actively doing these things. I'm actively going. Or another one is squatting down. Like squatting down ass to grass. All right, can you do it? And if you're like, oh dude, my mobility sucks, I just can't get down, or it's hard, or my hips are so tight. So that's more of a mobility issue. You don't really think, going over more squat, is it really hip mobility, is there ankle mobility? There's things happening in your body that's not allowing you. If you, for example, the bodyweight squat, if you can't squat as low, one of the most common reasons people can't squat as low as they think they should, okay, so 90 degrees is fine. Maybe you can go a little lower, that's fine. But if you could just barely get to a 90 degree squat without lifting your heels, one of the things is maybe your ankle mobility is limited. Okay, if you can't dorsiflex your ankle or lift it up like this as much, then you can't actively do that. But let's say like you're relaxed and you could totally like just get into it. Okay, that's the difference between flexibility and mobility. Actively, you can't get into it. Flexibility-wise, while you're just sleeping, you can move your hip back, your ankle back. So mobility-wise, actively, you lack that ability. So that's why if you can't do that, then your squat's gonna have to compensate by shifting your knee, shifting your hip, lifting your heels to get that movement. And you look at Spider Gwen, her mobility is legit because she has strength through all of that range of motion. She can squat it, she can swing, she has super strength within that range of motion. That is a prime example of mobility. There is no issues there. Her movement is strength through movement, and then it's just, there's no questions about it. I mean, she can move through all of her range of motion, which there's a lot of people that can't. When you go to flexibility, all right, flexibility, if you think about your joints, flexibility is passive range of motion, and you're thinking about Mr. Fantastic, all right? So passive range of motion, that is like, if I'm just like knocked out, all right? When people are knocked out or sleeping, all right, they can just flop everywhere. You can like move the thing, you can like, you ever see like, people get passed out drunk and you're like, man, I've never seen him bent over like that. I've never seen him like ragdoll. Like, dude, that guy's like in the Odin sleep right now. But that's passive range of motion because their body's just relaxed and they're just like in this range of motion. But mobility wise, again, going back to mobility, they can't actively get there, but passively they can. And that's flexibility. And people tend to mix up the two. Okay, so going into my shoulder, right? I can I can raise my shoulder up this high actively. What if I can't? So what if I find someone I can't raise it, like, oh, it hurts, I can't raise it up higher than this. But when they're sleeping and you raise their shoulder above their head, they go like that. But they're sleeping, they're not actively doing it. So this is passive, this is flexibility. So usually people think like, oh, flexibility is your problem. Well, you need to be more flexible. But I can tell you right now, there's people who've been in Cirque du Soleil, there's a lot of yogis, they still have pain. They still have back pain, they still have hip pain, they still have the muscle knots, and it's because it goes back to their mobility part. Right? So that's the difference. So again, if you look at Mr. Fantastic, he can stretch himself and like take on things passively. Like he could like stretch around something and all that. That's like that's like a crazy over the top point of flexibility where he could just kind of extend and stretch his limbs and just be super flexible with it. Like he could just take on a boulder or a car and just wrap around object and just sit there. All right. But you can argue like, well, he's actively moving through that range of motion. All right, that's the best example I can use for flexibility right now, guys. All right, so just work with me here. All right, so if you could just like, because he actually takes things very passively when he's using his powers most of the time. Okay, no one thinks about Mr. Fantastic as super strong. They think about him as super like stretchy and being able to like cover things or take things or all that stuff. That's his power. Okay, and that's flexibility. And that's the main difference, active versus passive range of motion. Think about going more deep, if I'm gonna dive deeper into this, flexibility is when you work on, if I'm diving deeper into this, when you work on mobility, you're working on your strength and ability to move through that range of motion efficiently. Okay, if you, like your flexibility, let's say your flexibility isn't an issue. All right, let's say you can move, you could externally insert, rotate, do all this, like when you're asleep, you could like move all the way back. But actively, you're like, oh, I can't do it. So when you're working on mobility, you're working on actually developing that strength to actively move in that extra range of motion. Because before you can get up to here. And then when you start working on mobility, when you do like isometric contractions, when you're working on that muscle, when you're working on that CNS, working on that nervous system to be like, hey, it's okay to go down here more. It's okay, I can move. So once you get your body able to open up and be like, okay, just allow your body part to move in that range of motion. Now the point of strengthening your mobility, the point of mobility is to not only allow yourself that range of motion, but also be strong in there. And that's how you're able to help improve human performance. When you're strong, efficient through your full range of motion, the chance of injury reduces. It's not eliminated, all right? Injury prevention is a myth. It's injury reduction. I've heard so many old strength coaches chew me out about that difference. So I'm gonna tell you this right now. It's injury reduction, not injury prevention. Our job as strength coaches and strength conditioning, we want to reduce the chances as much as we can for injury. Can we eliminate it? Not unless we have like a sensu bean from Dragonball Z or like the ability to heal people. All right, that'd be great. That'd be a great power to have. But again, so mobility and flexibility usually gets thrown into the conversation of injury prevention or injury It's injury reduction. All right, when we open up, when you're able to address your joints and your joint capsule, and you're able to open up that range of motion by training your body and your nervous system to allow you to move in that range of motion, now get strong in that range of motion. That's the point of mobility, all right? And I know I'm showing more love on mobility versus flexibility, and that's where our emphasis comes from, right? We work a lot on mobility, especially with our athletes and our clients. And it's like, I'm having like football players go like this, and then going like this, and they're like, they're like dying because we're doing movements on the shoulder, and I'm like internally rotate and now come down behind your back, and they're like, I can't, coach, I can't. But that's what we emphasize on. But yeah, mobility versus flexibility. This is Coach Austin with Hyper Strength and Conditioning. I hope this helps. So you guys that are, comment below what you need work on, mobility, flexibility, and other things you would want to learn about in this Versus series. All right, I'll see you guys later. Okay, bye. Today we're going over the difference between mobility and flexibility. Flexibility. God damn it, Austin. 3, 2, 1.